So, welcome everyone to Biblical Foundation Genesis, the Book of Beginnings, class 55. What a blessing to be able to study and share the book of Genesis together. And we go marvelously slowly so that we can read such a rich book of the Bible. So, this is now our 55th class, and we'll start Genesis chapter 11 today. So, praise the Lord. So, we're going to review what we studied last time, and that is the Table of Nations. All right, so our last lesson, and this will be our last discussion of the Table of Nations. And so, Lucas, can you kindly read Genesis 10:18, please, in English?
Then the Arphaxad and the Zematite and the Amatite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad.
Very good. And those are a lot of difficult names. I once suggest pronunciation improvement would be Canaanites. All right, so that I is nice and open, Canaanites. Very good. Let me try that in Portuguese. E ao Ardeu, ao Zemareu, e ao Ramateu, e depois se espalharam as famílias dos cananeus. All right, so Anandina, as you might see, the only Portuguese we try to use is we just translate the Bible verses so that no one will misunderstand a Bible verse. The English questions and me and conversation we all can misunderstand, but we want to make sure we understand completely the Word of God. Okay, so Pedro, can you please read question A in English?
How far abroad did the Canaanite spread?
Okay. So do you remember that? It's an interesting thought because here in Genesis 10:18, it mentions something of the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And this is one of the first ideas of people spreading far away. So what do you think? Do you remember how far abroad? How far did the Canaanites or the families of the Canaanites spread?
I don't remember.
Well,
I think there's in verse 19, it says something about Sodom, Gomorrah, and other cities are mentioned, Lasha.
yeah. And you're right, because the Table of Nations is the list of the 70 nations. And so those 70 nations or family groups, there's all humanity is descended from them. But here, when we get to verse 18, it gives us some specifics about the Canaanites. But to answer the question, and it's a somewhat esoteric question, and that is, we believe that the families of the Canaanites spread as far as the Americas. Okay,
Oh,
here to the New World. And so this verse was believed to refer to the Mongols. The most famous Mongol was Genghis Khan in the 12th century, and that he crossed over from Asia to the New World. And let's see, Lucas, do you remember how do you cross over from Asia to the New World? What's the name of that, at one point, a piece of land or area? It's not
I don't
easy.
know.
No problem. And then that was the Bering Strait. Okay. And because we believe it was during the Ice Age that there was the water was frozen And so there was relatively little distance between land, and so that these Canaanites or the Canaanites via the Mongols crossed the Bering Strait, and they may have been become ancestors to Native Americans, so to Indians. So very interesting. The Bible gives us a lot of interesting information. And so, and Dina, can you read question B in English, please?
Which American cult claims to be descendant from these Israelites in the New World?
Okay. So there's another American cult. So it's a Christian cult, and unfortunately, there are many cults founded in America. But this one is particularly famous, and they claim that they're descended from the Israelites. Let's see.
I-
It's another esoteric question. Maybe Pedro, do you remember Pedro from last class?
No, I
Okay,
don't.
no problem. It was the Mormons. And the
Oh,
Mormons are known, it's the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And
I,
in the Book of Mormons, they actually claim that they are then descendants of the Israelites.
I didn't know that.
So they likely, so they take this verse, Genesis 10:18, and they use a lot of imagination. Okay, to say that they are descended. And here they claim that, but there's absolutely zero evidence of it. Okay, so unfortunately, it's an absurd claim. Okay, so Lucas, can you kindly read Genesis 10:20 in English?
These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after they towns in their countries and in their nations.
Thank you. Very well read. Now, you probably know ham in English also is a type of meat, but that was just a coincidence. Okay, so Pedro and Lucas are back. So let me try this in Portuguese. Estes são os filhos de Cã segundo as suas famílias, segundo as suas línguas em suas terras, em suas nações. All right. And so that was thank you. So Pedro, can you kindly read question C in English?
Was thus the reply occurred at the Tower of Babel.
Very good. Okay, so this verse 10:20, it implies something interesting. It means it's after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. So what does that imply?
People
Is it
were,
hard?
oh.
Go ahead.
No, just that people were scattered according to their tongues.
Yes. And I think that gets to it because it sounds like after their families, after their tongues. So what occurred at the Tower of Babel is apparently they were divided by family and language.
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like there was a new language per family group. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so then, and Indina, can you kindly read Genesis 10:22 in English?
Yeah. The children of Shem, Elan, and Ashur, and Arpachshad, and Lud, and Aram.
Very
I
good.
don't know correctly. These are difficult.
You know what? All these names in the Old Testament can be a challenge in English and in Portuguese, but I think you did a very good accent. in English. It sounds right to me. Let me try that in Portuguese. Esses são os filhos de Cão, segundo a sua. Oh, no, that's not. I read that one. Os filhos de Sem são Elão, Assur, Arfaxade, Lude e Aram. All right. So may God forgive us if we mispronounce one of the Old Testament names. So let's go to Lucas. Lucas, can you kindly read question D? Here on this question D in English.
From which of Shem's sons did a famous widespread language descend?
Very good. Okay. So these are all, it's a listing of Shem's son. And so which for all these names looks like an important language in biblical times?
These I remember.
Aramaic,
Yes, very well done. Absolutely. Okay, so the table of nations is quite long, so I enjoy our looking at interesting names and things and saying, interesting things descended from that name. Okay, so Pedro, can you kindly read Genesis 10:25 in English?
And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan.
Very good, thank you. Let me try that in Portuguese. E a Eber nasceram dois filhos. O nome de um foi Peleg, porquanto em seus dias se repartiu a terra. E o nome do seu irmão foi Joktan. Joktan.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So another interesting verse. Now let's look. So that was Pedro. So Anandina, can you kindly read question E in English?
what kind of division of the earth might have occurred in Peleg's time?
Okay. So again, in the middle of this long list of the 70 nations, the Lord has put in interesting bits of information, and he says, Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided. What kind of division could that have been?
The division of the language.
You're absolutely right. And I believe that's the better biblical explanation. Some people believe that there was the division, the earth was divided by continents. Okay, but that doesn't, but during the time of Peleg, that doesn't make much sense. During the Noah's flood and all the turmoil, is more likely that if all the land masses were together in one continent and then split, that would occur during Noah's flood and those huge convulsions on the earth. So interesting. But thank you, Pedro. I think that's a correct answer. So Lucas, can you read Genesis 10:32 in English, please?
These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood.
Very good. One suggestion, and that is divided. Divided. All right, because remember, if you took the infinity of that divide, then there's a silent E at the end, and that implies the I is open. So not divided, but divided. So let me try that now in Portuguese. Estas são as famílias dos filhos de Noé, segundo as suas gerações, nas suas nações, e destes foram divididas as nações na terra depois do dilúvio. And Pedro, can you kindly read question F in English?
Does the Bible support claims of hominids population the earth?
What do you think? So hominids, you might not be familiar with that word. The idea there is those are pre-human beings. All right, so hominids, according to the world, are, for instance, Neanderthals, who they like to believe are not actually fully human. What do you think? Does the Bible support any of those claims?
No.
Correct. Okay. So there's no idea of other races of men outside of those in the Bible. And there was no evolution happening in the human race. And Indina, can you kindly read question G in English?
From Noah's 3 sons, all humans descend. Genesis 9:19. Do they represent 3 different races?
Okay. What do you think? Race is a very popular term today.
Yeah.
Too popular.
Yes.
And so do you remember, of Noah's 3 sons, are they, and we're told
And Japheth and Ham.
exactly right. All right, so do they, descended from those are different races?
I don't think so.
Correct. Okay, and no. And one thing, and I think, I'm not sure if in the Alameda Bible this is true, but in the King James Bible, the word race is never used. And so because, and this is even clearer in English, there aren't races, there's only one race,
Human.
the human race.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a modern invention say, no, the human race actually is split into various races. No. And so the Bible only talks about nations, which we understand to be nations or families, which we understand to be ethnic groups. Okay, so for instance, the Shemites descended from Shem include the Jews and Arabs. Okay, so the many peoples from the Middle East and a little bit outside of that are thought to be descended from Shem and are called Shemites. And what's the famous term today that refers to Shem?
And anti-Semite.
Exactly right, Pedro. So there you are, anti-Semite. In this sense, Semite is specifically Jewish. So excellent. So very good. So that was the table of nations, and let's now move on to Genesis chapter 11, and we're going to start the study of the Tower of Babel. So that which is, as we'll see, is another major dividing point in human history, in which once again, there is sin and then punishment. All right, we've had 2 major instances of sin and punishment and previously in the Bible. So which 2 are the 2 major ones prior to this?
The fall of the man in the Garden of Eden and the flood.
Absolutely right. Okay, very good. A true Bible scholar. All right, so let's go ahead. So, Lucas, can you please read Genesis 11:1 in English?
And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech.
Very well pronounced. Thank you. E era toda a terra de uma mesma língua e de uma mesma fala. Interesting. Okay. So, Pedro, can you kindly read question 1 in English?
What language did they likely speak? Why do you think so?
Okay. So Genesis 11:1 doesn't specify the language, but there was only one language. Any ideas what language that was?
Aramaic?
That's possible. What do you think, Pedro and Lucas?
Maybe the Hebrew.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And Indina, Aramaic was the world language in the time of Jesus.
Mhm.
And so Pedro, why do you what evidence might you provide to say that Hebrew was the world language at the time at the prior to the Tower of Babel?
I think that is because the names of the table of nations.
Yes, I think that's a very good. You're absolutely right. Many names, both people's names and place names in the Old Testament have a certain meaning in Hebrew. Okay, so
Mm.
it's not exactly always clear, but it's many of those names are apparently have a meaning in Hebrew, and that in and of itself is pretty good evidence that Hebrew was the one language they were talking about. Excellent. So, Anandina, can you read Genesis 11:2, please, in English?
And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there.
Thank you. Beautifully pronounced. E aconteceu que, partindo eles do Oriente, acharam vale na terra de Sinar e habitaram ali. All right. So, Lucas, can you kindly read question 2 in English?
When was the land of Shinar last sighted?
Okay, well pronounced. What do you think? So, I'll give you a hint. We learned about the land of Shinar in the Table of Nations, so in the prior chapter. Does anyone kind of remember? Well, and the reason I ask is it's mentioned in Genesis 10:10 in regards to Nimrod, who's the grandson of Ham. Okay, so so it's clear that we're coming to the area where Nimrod is going to be ruling. And Indina, can you kindly read Genesis 11:3 for us in English?
And they said to one another, Go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar.
Very well pronounced. Thank you. Look how descriptive the Bible is. My goodness. E disseram uns aos outros, eia, façamos tijolos e queimemos-lo bem. E foi-lhes o tijolo por pedra e o betume por cal. Wow. Interesting stuff. So, Lucas, can you kindly read question 4 in English?
He is making an altar out of bricks and carriages in the Bible?
Okay. What do you think?
No.
Correct, Lucas. Absolutely correct. So this is, I might be the first reference to brick in the Bible, but let's go look at a later on verse and see what that implies about building altars with bricks. So, and then I'm going to ask you to guess which mystery book is that in. So, Pedro, can you read XX chapter 26, verses 5 to 6, please, in English?
And there shalt thou build an altar unto the Lord thy God, an altar of stones. Thou shalt not lift up any iron tool upon them. Thou shalt build the altar of the Lord thy God of whole stones, and thou shalt offer burnt offerings thereon unto the Lord thy God.
Very well pronounced. Okay, let me try that in Portuguese. E aí edificarás altar ao Senhor teu Deus, altar de pedras. Não alçarás instrumento de ferro sobre elas. De pedras brutas edificarás o altar do Senhor teu Deus, e sobre ele oferecerás holocaustos do Senhor teu Deus. Interesting.
One suggestion.
Yes, please.
I think in the word holocaustus, you make a sound like in English, but in Portuguese the it has no sound.
Ah, thank you. So it's
It's
holocausto.
silent.
Yes.
It's holocaust.
Thank you very much, Pedro.
Yes.
I appreciate it. I've never seen that word in Portuguese before, so it's my first encounter. Excellent. All right, so does anyone want to guess which book
Okay.
it is? It's not Genesis.
Is Deuteronomy.
Absolutely right, Lucas, our Bible scholar, our youngest Bible scholar, Deuteronomy. Well done. Okay. So so let's take a look at this. So it's thou shalt not lift up any iron tool upon them. So here it's mentioning you shouldn't be breaking and cutting rocks. Thou shalt build the altar of whole stones. Uh, and and obviously bricks are not whole stones. So the idea of making an altar of brick, at least at a future point. But remember, various times we learn of a commandment later in the Bible, but it's implied that the law or commandment was already known. So hence Cain and Abel both already knew that a proper sacrifice would be an animal blood sacrifice, even though we don't learn about that until later in the Bible. Okay, so this makes it sound like altars made with anything outside of whole stones is not God's desire. So let's go ahead. So, and Indina, can you kindly read Genesis 11:4 in English?
And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth.
Wow, thank you. Very well read. Let me try that in Portuguese. E disseram, e aí, edificamos nós uma cidade e uma torre cujo cume toque nos céus, e façamo-nos um nome para que não sejamos espalhados sobre a face de toda a terra. Oh, what a rebellious verse, my goodness. Now, I'd like to, what does it mean when let us make us a name? Let us make us a name. Does that mean just create a name? Like create the name Pedro and Lucas?
I think it's to do something important, at least that
Yes,
considered important, so that they would be famous and
ex
known as the,
exactly right. So it's like a name of renown.
yes.
uh, which is I think a reference to Nimrod as a name of renown. So yes, those make us a name that everyone knows. Okay, so let's go ahead with, and so Lucas, can you kindly read question 5 in English?
Is trying to build a high place into the heavens a good idea?
All right, wait, we want to explore space. So why not build a tower? Why not build a high place into the heavens? You know, much easier than sending rockets up.
Obviously, it was not a good idea.
Correct. Okay, and why do you think I use the term high place? Do you remember what the Jews, the Israelites, were punished for repeatedly? What did they do in high places?
They constructed some kinds of altars and
Sacrifice.
praise to other gods.
Exactly right. Okay. And so and other gods, so idols. So they
Right.
worshiped idols in high places. Okay, so this was the first high place.
Yes.
Okay. And it was not a good idea. Okay, so Pedro, can you kindly read question 6 in English?
What could motivate building such a tall tower?
Mhm. What do you think? Very well pronounced. Thank you.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was to let us a name. So they wanted to become famous. But why a tall tower into the heavens?
I don't know the answer.
Well, the verse gives us a hint when it talks about whose top may reach unto heaven. Okay, so this was their motivation seems to be, all right, we're going to make this so tall, we're going to get to heaven.
To be nearest to God.
Okay. And that would be a nice benign motivation to be nearer to God. But remember, high places in the Bible is never a good idea. Okay, so to build a high place to be nearer to God does not seem to work in the Bible. And what do you think, Anandine? Might there be a less good motivation for building such a tall tower?
And maybe they thought they could be like God, having
Exactly right.
we
Exactly.
are here and we can control things like that.
Exactly right. Okay, so I think that is the explanation for their main motivation for building such a tall tower was to become God-like.
Or to play God, as people
Yes.
use.
And we've heard this before. Where was someone promised they could become a god?
In the Garden of Eden,
Absolutely right.
the serpent saying to the woman,
Absolutely right. So I think it was what, Genesis 3:4. The serpent or Satan promises to Eve that she can be as a god. So Nimrod was just saying, hey, it didn't work for her, but why not for me? Okay, so last question. Anandina, can you kindly read question 7 in English?
Where does a rebellion become clear?
Okay, so remember when we read that horrible verse, Genesis 11:4, I commented, oh, what a rebellion. So where does the rebellion become clear? Obviously, to become like God is like a rebellion in and of itself, or to wish to become godlike. But where is it directly rebellious, what they said in this verse?
in the last part of this verse, that that they were saying that they would be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth.
Excellent, Pedro. And so that is resisting what commandment?
To spread throughout
Yeah.
the earth?
Yes. And they froze for a moment, but they'll be back. So sometimes the internet connection is, ooh, but you're absolutely right, Anandina. So let's see that they hopefully will come back. Sometimes they have to leave and then come back in. There, he turned off his video. Pedro and Lucas, you're back.
Yes, here we are.
Excellent. Okay, good. You're joining us for the end of the class. Excellent. Okay, so Anandina had a good idea. Uh, which commandment was that part of the verse that Pedro correctly identified to be direct rebellion? But what was the commandment that they were rebelling against?
I, I don't know.
Well, and Enandina mentioned it, and I'll be specific. In Genesis 9, verse 1 and verse 7, man is mandated to populate and replenish the earth. Okay, and so populate and replenish is the idea. No, no, no. You're not going to stay in one place. You have to go and spread out over my entire creation. And he repeated that twice. And they knew that that was God's will because, again, this is in their own word, in their own reasoning, their own words, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. It's like we love each other. We want to stay together as one big happy family. We don't want to go like divide and spread over the earth. Well, it was not one big happy family, and it didn't stay one family for long. So, excellent. All right, so I think that's it. And any questions or comments in English?
I think so.
All right. So I'm going to, here we are.